Hey, ARMY, this is Taehyung. I don't usually talk about personal things like this, but tonight feels a little different. Maybe it's because I've been thinking a lot about time, about how fast it moves, how it teaches us, and how it shapes what we call the right moment. I once told my mom I won't get married until I'm 30. It wasn't just a random number or a line meant to sound poetic. It came from something deep inside me, something that took years to understand. When I was younger, I used to think 30 sounded old. I thought by then I'd already have everything figured out, my music, my family, my happiness. But the truth is, the older I got, the more I realized that understanding yourself takes more than time it takes living, losing, healing, and learning how to begin again. My mom used to tell me, Tai, you feel things too deeply, you love too fast, you trust too easily. And maybe she was right. I used to give my heart to people who didn't know how to hold it. I used to fall for the idea of love, not the reality. There were moments I almost lost myself in trying to be enough for someone else, for fans, for the world. But somewhere in the middle of all the noise, I started to hear something clearer, my own voice. It whispered, wait, wait until you know what peace feels like. Wait until you can sit alone without feeling lonely. Wait until love isn't something you chase, but something that arrives quietly, like morning light through a window. That's what I meant when I told my mom I'd wait until 30. It wasn't about delaying marriage, it was about preparing my heart. I wanted to build a life that didn't depend on anyone's approval. I wanted to understand what kind of man I could be when I wasn't trying to impress, perform, or prove. There's something beautiful about stillness, about nights when the city sleeps and you're just sitting by your window watching the world breathe. I used to do that a lot in Seoul. The moonlight would spill into my room and I'd think about how quiet honesty feels. Sometimes I'd imagine myself at 30, not as a superstar or a public figure, but as a man who finally understands what he truly wants. Maybe I'd be living in a small house near the sea, maybe still making music, maybe still performing, but more than anything, I'd be at peace with who I am. My mom smiled when I told her that. She said, you've always been different, Tae. You love the world, but you don't rush it. And maybe she saw something in me I couldn't see yet, a patience that wasn't weakness but strength. You see, when you live in the spotlight, people expect your life to move faster. They think you should have everything now, success, love, stability. But the truth is, life doesn't bloom under pressure. It blooms under patience. I remember one night after a concert in Japan, I sat in the hotel room with a cup of tea looking out over the city lights. I could hear Jungkook humming something in the next room, soft and unintentional. It made me smile. That moment felt pure, just two people who'd grown up together, chasing dreams that once felt too big for us. I thought to myself, this is what matters. Not fame, not noise, but connection, the kind that doesn't need to be loud to be real. I wanted love to feel like that, calm, steady, safe, the kind of love that doesn't ask you to perform but to be. I told my mom that love for me should feel like home, and until I find that, I'll wait. She didn't say much, just nodded. But her eyes told me everything. Maybe she understood that her son, who once ran wild through the streets of Daegu dreaming of the stage, was finally learning to slow down. Sometimes people think waiting means fear, but for me, waiting means faith. Faith that what's meant for me won't need to be rushed. I've seen what happens when love comes too early, when it burns too fast and leaves ashes behind. I've seen people lose themselves in trying to be someone else's dream. I don't want that. I want to meet love as myself fully, honestly, and with nothing to hide. There's a Korean phrase my grandmother used to say, 꽃은 때가 되면 핀다. It means a flower blooms when it's ready. And that's how I feel about marriage, about love, about life. Sometimes I wonder what my life will look like in 5, 10 years. Will I still sing? Will I still find joy in the small things like coffee at dawn or dogs running by the river? I hope so, because those moments remind me that life isn't measured by milestones, it's measured by meaning. The world teaches us to chase more success, more validation, more love, but what I've learned is that the real treasure is contentment. And right now, I'm content with who I'm becoming. So when I told my mom I'd wait until 30, it wasn't a promise to avoid love, it was a promise to protect it, to let it arrive in its own time when I'm ready to give it the best version of me. I don't know what will happen tomorrow. Maybe I'll meet someone who changes everything. Maybe I won't. But I do know this: whatever love finds me, I'll be ready to stay. Not because I'm told to, but because I choose to. That to me is what real love looks like. When I think about that conversation with my mom, I can still see the way her face softened. It wasn't a moment full of tears or dramatic words. It was quiet, simple, and sincere. We were sitting at the kitchen table in Daegu. She was peeling apples, and I was just watching her hands move slowly, like she'd done that 1,000 times before. I told her again, Mom, I think I'll wait until I'm 30 to get married. She didn't look up right away. She just smiled slightly, as if she'd already known what I was going to say. You've always been like that, Tae. You never rush. There was warmth in her tone. Not surprise, not disappointment, just understanding. I think mothers always know their sons in ways words can't explain. When I was little, my mom used to tell me stories about her own youth. She talked about how she met my dad, how simple things were back then. She said the best kind of love isn't the one that makes your heart race, it's the one that helps your heart rest. That line stayed with me for years. Maybe that's why I see love differently. It's not about fireworks. It's about a quiet sunset that doesn't need to be seen by anyone else. Sometimes I wonder how different my mom's life would have been if she hadn't married young. She always says she doesn't regret anything, but I can see in her eyes that she wishes she had a little more time for herself before giving her whole heart away. Maybe that's part of why she smiled when I said I'd wait. She understood I wasn't avoiding love. I was protecting the version of myself that still needed space to grow. There's this thing people often misunderstand about idols. They think we're surrounded by love all the time: fans, lights, messages, attention. But sometimes that kind of love can make you feel lonelier. It's love that shines so brightly it blinds you. What I've learned is that true love, whether it's from family, friends, or someone special, is the one that lets you breathe. When BTS first started, I didn't have much time to think about these things. My whole world was training, rehearsing, performing, surviving. Back then, marriage or love felt like something distant, something other people talked about in stories. But as the years went on, I started to realize that even when we are surrounded by millions of people, there's a small part of us that still longs to be understood. Sometimes after concerts, I'd go back to my hotel room and just lie on the bed in silence. I'd look at the ceiling and think about my parents, my dog Yontan, and the life I'd left waiting in Daegu. It made me wonder, what would it feel like to live quietly again away from all the noise? My mom once told me, "You're happiest when you're near simple things: dogs, nature, music, family." She's right. Those are the things that keep me grounded. They remind me of who I am without the lights, without the camera. That's why I want to wait to make sure the person I marry meets that version of me, not just the one people see on stage. When you live your life under the spotlight, love becomes complicated. You start to question whether people like you or the idea of you. It's not easy to tell the difference. That's why patience becomes a kind of shield. It gives you time to see who stays even when the stage lights fade. I think about that often. What if I meet someone who doesn't care about fame, who doesn't need the attention, someone who sees the real me, the quiet one who writes songs at 3 a.m., or spends hours watching the rain? That's the kind of connection I want. And I believe waiting gives me a better chance of finding it. There was a time when people asked me in interviews, "What kind of person do you want to marry?" I'd always laugh because how can I describe something I've never truly known? But I'd say, someone warm, someone honest, someone who makes home feel like music. Now that I'm older, I think I finally understand what I meant. Warmth isn't just about kindness, it's about peace. Honesty isn't just about truth, it's about being real, even when it's uncomfortable. And home isn't a place, it's the feeling of being understood without having to speak. That's the kind of love I want to build. And if it takes time, then I'll wait as long as I have to. Sometimes when I visit my parents, my mom still asks, "Do you still plan to wait until 30?" I laugh. "Maybe even longer, mom," I tell her, "if that's what it takes to find what's real." She'll shake her head and smile like she always does, then say, "You and your heart always so stubborn." But I think she's proud. I think she knows her son is learning to live by his own rhythm, not by what the world expects. There's something beautiful about timing, how life gives us the right things when we're ready, not when we want them. I used to hate waiting. I used to think it meant I was falling behind. But now I see it differently. Waiting isn't losing time. It's preparing for the moment that will change everything. When I was in Paris for a photo shoot, I remember walking alone by the sand at night. The air was cold, the light soft, and people were holding hands as they passed me by. For a second, I felt a pang of longing, like I wanted that too. But then I smiled because I realized something. I wasn't lonely. I was just aware. Aware of what I want. Aware of who I'm becoming. And maybe that awareness is love too, the kind that starts with yourself. I know 30 isn't far away. Some people think it's a deadline, but to me, it's a milestone. It's the age where I'll look back at everything I've learned, the mistakes, the heartbreaks, the growth, and I'll finally be able to say, now I'm ready. Ready to love without fear. Ready to stay without running. Ready to give without losing myself. Until then, I'll keep living with an open heart. I'll keep making music, spending time with people who make me laugh, and loving the small things that make life beautiful. Because love isn't something you chase, it's something you grow into. And when it finds me, I'll be waiting with both hands open. There's something about turning older that makes you see life differently. When I was younger, I thought love was something that happened to you like a sudden rush, a spark that caught you off guard. But now, I think love is something you build. Like a song, it takes rhythm, patience, and the right melody to make it feel alive. When I imagine myself at 30, I don't see a finish line. I see a horizon, the beginning of something calmer, wiser, softer. Maybe that's why I've never been afraid of that number. People sometimes joke, Taehyung, why 30? And I always smile and say, because 30 feels like peace. In your 20s, everything moves fast: success, emotions, expectations. It's like you're living in a storm, constantly proving who you are to the world. But I think your 30s are when you start to prove who you are to yourself. That's when you begin to choose what truly matters. I've seen how different people handle love at different stages. Namjoon once told me something that stuck with me. We were sitting by the Han River one night talking about life, and he said, love doesn't have to be loud to be real. It's not about timing, it's about readiness. I didn't fully understand it back then, but now it makes sense. You can meet the right person at the wrong time, and if your heart isn't ready, love can't grow. Yoon Gi-hyung, on the other hand, sees love as freedom. He once said, the moment you feel trapped, it stops being love. That line hit me hard. Maybe that's why I've always wanted a relationship that breathes one, where both people still have room to dream, to be themselves, to exist without fear. And Jin Hyung, he always talks about laughter. He says, if you can still laugh together when things get hard, then you've already found something special. Then there's Jungkook. We talk about this kind of thing sometimes. He's younger, but sometimes he says things that sound much older. One night after a long day, we were sitting quietly backstage, and he said, Hyung, I think you'll be the kind of person who loves once, but deeply. I laughed, but maybe he was right. I don't want many loves. I just want one that feels timeless. You know, the older I get, the more I realize that love and music aren't so different. Both start as emotions you can't quite name, then they grow into something that speaks for you. But if you rush the process, the song never sounds right and neither does love. There were moments when I thought I'd found it, that deep connection that feels like home. But life has a way of showing you the truth slowly. Sometimes the people who come into your life are meant to teach you, not stay, and that's okay. Every person who has walked with me, even briefly, helped me see a new part of myself. When I told my mom I'd wait until 30, I think what I was really saying was, I want to meet love without fear of losing myself again. Because there were times I did lose myself, not because someone took it away, but because I gave it too easily. I've always been the kind of person who feels deeply. I write songs from emotions that most people hide. I fall in love with details, the way someone smiles, the way they look at the world, the way they say your name. But the thing about feeling deeply is that it also means you break deeply. And I've had to learn that not everyone can meet you at that depth. That's why now I'm learning to slow down. I'm learning that love should feel like a soft echo, not a crash. Sometimes, when I'm alone in my studio, I think about how much my perspective has changed. I used to want big things, grand gestures, passion that could fill the sky, but now I crave quiet. I want conversations that last until dawn, the kind of companionship that feels like warmth on a cold night. I want love that stays not because it has to, but because it wants to. Maybe that's why I said 30. Maybe it's not really about the number. Maybe it's about being ready to give that kind of love, the kind that's patient, forgiving, and real. When I talk to my mom about these things now, she always listens quietly. Sometimes she laughs and says, "You sound like an old soul." And maybe she's right. I've seen so many different kinds of love from the stage, from fans, from family, and all of it has shaped the way I see the world. Army's love, for example, it's something I'll never take for granted. It's a kind of love that gives me strength even when I don't realize I need it. It's patient, it's unconditional, and it reminds me that connection doesn't always have to be personal to be powerful. But when it comes to the kind of love that becomes your forever, I think it needs to grow slowly, like a tree. You can't plant it today and expect shade tomorrow. You water it, you give it light, and you wait. That's what I'm doing, waiting and growing. Sometimes when I imagine the future, I see myself sitting with someone I love, maybe somewhere quiet, no cameras, no stage lights, just the sound of the wind and laughter. Maybe we'll talk about silly things, maybe we'll sit in silence, but I'll know deep down that I waited for this. And in that moment, all the waiting will make sense. Because love that comes after patience feels different. It's not rushed, it's not desperate, it's calm like the ocean after a storm. I think my mom knew that all along. Maybe that's why she didn't argue when I told her I'd wait. Maybe she knew her son wasn't afraid of being alone. He was learning how to be whole. And once you become whole, love doesn't complete you, it joins you. Sometimes, when the night gets quiet and the city finally sleeps, I find myself staring at the ceiling thinking about time. How strange it is that we spend our lives chasing it, trying to make it slow down when we're happy, and trying to make it move faster when we're lost. When I told my mom I'd wait until 30, I wasn't rejecting love, I was protecting it. Protecting the version of love I still believe in, one that's honest, warm, and steady. I wanted to give myself time to grow into the kind of man who can love without fear, who can understand before reacting, who can listen before speaking. Because when I look back at the younger version of myself, I see someone who loved passionately, but also someone who was learning through mistakes. There were moments when I gave too much, when I expected others to fill the spaces I hadn't learned to fill myself. That's what time teaches you, to build a home inside your own heart first. And honestly, I think I needed that. I needed to be alone sometimes, to feel the silence, to hear my thoughts, to let them hurt a little until they made sense. When you spend so much of your life on stage, surrounded by noise and lights, you forget what silence sounds like. But it's in that silence that I started understanding what I truly wanted and what I didn't. I remember one night, after a long day of filming, I went out for a late drive. No destination, no music, just the sound of the road. The city lights blurred like stars on the ground, and I remember thinking, Maybe growing up is just learning to let things be even when they don't make sense yet. At that moment, I whispered to myself, love will come when it's supposed to. Don't chase it, Tai. Just live. That's when I realized I didn't need to have everything figured out right now. I didn't need to know who I'd marry or when or how my life would look in 5 years. I just needed to live it honestly, one breath at a time. My mom has always been my quiet strength. She doesn't always say much, but her eyes do. Every time I visit home, she looks at me the same way, proud but worried. She worries that maybe I work too hard, that I give too much of myself away. And sometimes she asks softly, are you happy? And every time I smile and tell her, yes, mom, I'm happy. Because happiness to me isn't about having everything, it's about being at peace with where you are. When I was younger, I thought success meant applause, cameras, stages. But now, success feels more like balance. Being able to smile genuinely, to eat a meal slowly, to love my friends deeply, and to go to sleep without regret. And that's what I want before I get married, peace. Because I believe peace is the foundation of love. Without it, even the strongest relationships can crumble. Sometimes armies ask me, Taehyung, do you ever get lonely? And I always answer honestly, yes, sometimes. But I think everyone does. Loneliness doesn't mean something's missing. Sometimes it's just your soul reminding you that it still feels deeply. And that's not a bad thing. When I feel lonely, I write, I sing, I create, because in those moments I can talk to myself in a language only I understand. That's how I heal. That's how I keep loving the world even when it feels quiet. I think a lot about what kind of husband I'll be one day. I want to be the kind who listens, the kind who notices small things. The way she drinks her coffee, the way she looks at the sky when she's lost in thought, the way she laughs when she forgets I'm watching. I want to protect those moments, not control them. Maybe I'll wake up early to cook breakfast. Maybe we'll dance in the kitchen when the music's playing too loud. Simple things, but real. That's what I crave. When I talk about waiting until 30, people think it's just a number. But for me, it's a promise to become a man who can love softly without fear. A man who can stand beside someone and say, I'm not perfect, but I've learned how to stay. And if that love doesn't come at 30, that's okay too. Because maybe it's not about the age, maybe it's about the readiness of the heart. To my mom, I'd say this: thank you for teaching me that love isn't about rushing, it's about understanding. You taught me that patience doesn't mean waiting in silence, it means growing in peace. And to Army, who've been with me through every season, thank you for teaching me what unconditional love feels like. You've shown me that connection can exist even across oceans. Because of you, I've learned that love doesn't always need to be spoken, sometimes it's just felt. So until the day I'm ready to say I do, I'll keep learning, I'll keep singing, growing, laughing, living with open hands and a full heart. Because love isn't something I'm afraid to find. It's something I'm preparing to honor. And when that time comes, whether it's at 30 or beyond, I'll be ready. Um, Sometimes I think about how everything in my life has been about timing. The right song at the right moment, the right people walking in when I needed them the most. And even the right silences, the kind that teach you what words never could. Waiting until 30 isn't a rule I wrote down somewhere. It's a reflection of the person I'm still becoming. When I look back, I see how every year has shaped me in ways I didn't expect. The 20-year-old me was wide-eyed, hopeful, still trying to understand what love even meant. The 25-year-old me began to understand how fragile and powerful the heart can be. And the me that's standing here now, I'm still learning. My mom once said something to me quietly over dinner one evening. She said, "Tae, love isn't supposed to complete you. It's supposed to walk beside you." That sentence changed everything for me. Because for a long time, I thought love meant finding someone to fill the spaces I couldn't fill myself. But she was right. Love shouldn't be about completion, it should be about companionship. That's why I told her I wanted to wait. Not because I don't want to love, but because I want to walk into it with both feet steady. I want to meet someone when I'm ready to give, not just to receive. Someone who'll understand that sometimes I disappear into music, that sometimes I fall quiet because I'm lost in thought, and that sometimes I'll show love through silence instead of words. You know, love isn't always grand gestures. It's not always fireworks or confessions under the rain. Sometimes it's just being there sitting beside someone in comfortable silence, cooking a meal together, laughing about nothing. That's the kind of love I want. There was a time when I was afraid of growing older. I thought it meant losing excitement, losing spontaneity, losing myself. But now I realize that growing older just means growing deeper in patience, understanding, and gratitude. And I think that's beautiful. When I see my mom smile now, there's peace in her eyes. She doesn't ask me about marriage anymore. Instead, she asks if I've eaten, if I've slept, if I'm taking care of myself. Maybe she understands now that her son is learning what love truly means. That I'm not running away from commitment, but preparing myself for it. And when that day finally comes, when I meet someone who makes me feel like home, I'll tell my mom first. I'll tell her, "You were right, mom. Waiting wasn't loneliness, it was preparation." I imagine that day sometimes. The person I'll stand beside, the one who'll see me, not as an artist, not as V, but just as Kim Taehyung. Someone who'll hold my hand when the lights go out, who'll understand that the person behind the smile sometimes gets tired too. Someone who'll love me not because of what I do, but because of who I am. That kind of love, it deserves patience. It deserves time. So until that day, I'll keep learning about love through life itself, through my fans' letters, through laughter with my friends, through late night conversations with my mom, through the music that reminds me who I am. Sometimes, when I finish a concert and I see ARMY waving light sticks like stars in the dark, I think to myself, this is love too. It may not be romantic, but it's real. It's warm. It's mine. So, to my mom, thank you for trusting me even when you worried. To ARMY, thank you for walking beside me even when I had no word. And to myself, thank you for waiting, for choosing peace over pressure, and for believing that love will find its way. Because it will. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but when it comes, I'll be ready to give it everything. Not because I waited until 30, but because by then I'll know exactly what kind of love I want to give. So, when you hear me say that I told my mom I'd wait until I'm 30 to get married, remember, it's not about age. It's about becoming the person who's ready to love right. And if you're listening to this tonight, wherever you are, don't rush your story. Don't compare your timeline to anyone else's. Take your time, grow, heal, learn, because love the real kind will meet you when you're ready. Pauses softly, and when it does, I hope it feels just like this moment, calm, honest, and full of quiet happiness. Thank you for listening. This is Taehyung, and this was my story. When the camera stops rolling and the lights fade into quiet shadows, I often find myself sitting in my room looking out the window. The world outside never really stops. The city hums, cars pass, people rush. But for me, there's this little space where everything stands still. That's where I think about everything: love, life, time, family, and how all of them are connected in a way words can never fully explain. You see, I've learned that life doesn't always go the way we plan it to. We dream, we promise, we prepare, but sometimes life has its own rhythm. And that's okay, because what matters most is not how fast we move, but how deeply we live. Waiting until 30 to get married, it started as a simple statement. But over time, it became something deeper. It became a reminder to live with intention, to not just chase what looks good, but to choose what feels right. I remember when I first told my mom. She smiled, but there was a pause. Maybe she thought I was just saying it because I was busy with my career or because I wasn't ready to settle down. But the truth is, I wanted her to know that her son values love too much to rush it. That I want to walk into it with the same care she's always given to our family, quietly, gently, and wholeheartedly. Sometimes I wonder what she thinks when she sees me on TV, smiling, performing, surrounded by so many people, yet coming home to silence. But maybe she knows that in those quiet moments, I'm not lonely. I'm just reflecting. Because for me, silence isn't emptiness, it's peace. And I think love grows best in peace. I've also learned that love is not about perfection. It's about two imperfect souls choosing to stay even when things get messy. It's about listening when you rather argue, understanding when you feel misunderstood, and holding on not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. There will come a time when I'll meet someone who feels like home. Not someone who completes me, but someone who matches my peace. We won't need to force anything, it'll flow naturally like music. And when that time comes, I'll be ready to share everything I've learned in these years of waiting, all the laughter, pain, quiet nights, and lessons I've gathered. Until then, I'll keep growing, keep learning, and keep giving love in every form I can to my family, to my friends, to ARMY, and to the world that continues to believe in me. Because love isn't limited to romance, it's in every thank you, every I'm proud of you, every silent moment of care. And maybe one day, when I'm standing at the altar, I'll see my mom in the front row smiling that same warm smile. She'll know that every promise I made was kept. That waiting wasn't about delaying happiness. It was about preparing my heart to share it fully. I'll hold her hand just like when I was a child and whisper, "Mom, I waited. Just like I told you I would, and it was worth it." And maybe I'll laugh because I'll realize that time didn't take love away, it brought it closer, little by little, until it was right where it was meant to be. And maybe that's what love really is. Not about when it happens, but who you are when it finally does. Thank you for staying until the end. This is Taehyung Pop Saste, and I hope you find the kind of love that makes time feel beautiful.